The most powerful empire in history didn't collapse overnight. It slowly destroyed itself. The story of Rome is not simply the rise and fall of a powerful empire. It is a deep and complex journey of human ambition, strength, intelligence, greed, and ultimately, failure. Because when we talk about Rome, we are not just talking about a city or a kingdom. We are talking about a system so vast, so influential, that it shaped the course of human civilization for centuries. And to truly understand how Rome fell, we must first understand how it became so powerful. Because only then can we see how something so strong could eventually collapse. Rome did not begin as a superpower. It started as a small settlement near the Tiber River, surrounded by enemies and constantly under threat. Yet what made Rome different was not just its ability to fight, but its ability to learn, adapt, and improve. Early Romans were not always the strongest or the richest, but they were disciplined and strategic. They studied their enemies, copied what worked, and refined it until they became better than those they once feared. This mindset allowed Rome to slowly expand, first across the Italian peninsula and then beyond, conquering neighboring regions and absorbing their people, culture, and knowledge. And this was one of Rome's greatest strengths. Instead of destroying everything, they integrated it, making the empire stronger with every victory. Over time, Rome transformed from a republic into a powerful empire, ruled by emperors who controlled vast territories stretching across Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. At its peak, Rome governed millions, different languages, different cultures, yet somehow maintained order and unity. Through strong leadership, advanced infrastructure, and an organized system, Roman roads connected the empire. Armies moved faster, trade expanded, aqueducts brought water, life improved. Roman law created order and stability. But beneath all this strength, there was a hidden weakness. A weakness that would eventually destroy everything. And that weakness was its own size. Because as Rome expanded, it became harder to control. Communication slowed, decisions delayed, control weakened, and slowly cracks began to form. At first small, but growing over time. Then came political instability. After the death of Marcus Aurelius, power became uncertain, leadership unstable. Emperors were no longer chosen for skill, but for power, force, and manipulation. A dangerous cycle began. Leaders replaced again and again, sometimes within months, sometimes within weeks. Assassinations, betrayals, chaos at the top. And when leadership fails, everything below it begins to fall. At the same time, the economy weakened. Maintaining the empire was expensive. Taxes increased, people suffered. Farmers abandoned land, food declined, trade slowed, and then inflation. Coins lost value, trust disappeared. The system started collapsing. Meanwhile, the military weakened. Once disciplined, once loyal, now divided. Fewer Romans joined, more mercenaries hired. Men who fought not for Rome, but for money. And when loyalty disappears, so does strength. At the same time, danger approached from the outside. Tribes moved closer. Goths, Vandals, and many more. Not just warriors, but entire communities. And Rome was no longer feared. In 376 AD, the Goths asked for refuge. Rome allowed them in, but treated them badly. Exploitation, injustice, anger grew, until finally, rebellion. The Battle of Adrianople, 378 AD. Rome defeated, the emperor killed, and for the first time, Rome looked weak. And once that illusion broke, everything changed. More invasions followed, more losses, more chaos. Until finally, 410 AD, Rome itself was attacked, the city sacked by the Visigoths led by Alaric. A moment that shocked the world. Rome was no longer untouchable, and though it survived, it was never the same again. Its power fading, its control slipping, until finally, 476 AD, the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed, and the Western Roman Empire came to an end. But the truth is, Rome did not fall in a day. It declined slowly, piece by piece, because of internal weakness and external pressure. And that is what makes Rome's story so powerful. Because it teaches us even the strongest systems can fall if they fail to adapt, fail to stay stable, and ignore the cracks until it's too late. As Rome continued its slow decline, after the devastating defeat at Adrianople, the empire entered a phase where survival itself became its primary goal, rather than expansion or dominance. And this shift in mindset was critical, because for centuries, Rome had been built on the idea of growth, conquest, and control. But now, it was being forced into a defensive position, reacting to events rather than shaping them. And this change revealed something deeper, just how fragile the system had become, because an empire that once dictated the future was now struggling just to protect its present. And during this period, the internal divisions within Rome became even more visible, as the empire was effectively split into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. A decision originally made to improve administration and control, but instead, it created separation of resources, priorities, and leadership. And while the Eastern Roman Empire, which would later be known as the Byzantine Empire, managed to remain relatively stable and prosperous, the Western Roman Empire faced increasing difficulties. It lacked economic strength, political stability, and military resources. And this imbalance played a major role in the eventual collapse of the West, because without support, it could not deal with growing threats, both inside and outside its borders. And as time passed, the Western Empire became increasingly dependent on local leaders and generals to maintain order. But this came at a cost, because central authority began to weaken. These individuals often acted in their own interests, not for Rome, but for themselves. And slowly, loyalty to the empire was replaced by loyalty to individuals. And this fragmentation of power made the system even more unstable. At the same time, the economy continued to deteriorate. Trade networks began to collapse. Cities, once the heart of Roman life, started to decline. People moved away, seeking safety in rural areas. And this shift changed everything, because cities were not just places to live, they were centers of culture, commerce, and identity. And their decline signaled something far worse, a deeper collapse of the system itself. As economic activity decreased, the government struggled to collect taxes, and with fewer resources, it could no longer maintain the army or infrastructure. And so, a vicious cycle began, where every problem made the others worse. At the same time, external pressures continued to rise, different groups testing Rome's defenses, searching for opportunity, land, resources, power. And among them, the Vandals emerged as a serious threat, moving through Gaul, into Spain, and eventually into North Africa, a region critical to Rome, because it supplied grain to feed the empire. And when the Vandals took control of North Africa, it was a devastating blow. Rome lost one of its most valuable lifelines. Food, revenue, stability, all weakened. And this loss exposed the truth. Rome was no longer strong enough to protect what mattered most. And as more territories fell, its influence continued to shrink, its power continued to fade, and its ability to respond grew weaker with each passing year. Meanwhile, the military itself was changing. Generals gaining more power, more influence, sometimes even challenging the emperor, and in some cases, deciding who would sit on the throne. And this added another layer of instability, because now power was not controlled, it was contested, constantly. And in such an environment, long-term planning became impossible. Leaders focused only on survival, on holding power, not on solving problems. And so, the deeper issues were never fixed. They were ignored until they grew too large to control. Another critical change was happening within Rome. Its identity was shifting as more non-Roman groups settled within the empire. And while this diversity could be strength, it often created tension because integration was incomplete. Many groups held on to their own customs, their own loyalties, and unity began to weaken. And in times of crisis, this lack of unity became dangerous because survival requires cooperation, trust, shared purpose, and Rome was losing all three. As a result, the empire became dependent on alliances with these same groups to defend its borders, but these alliances were unstable, fragile, and could turn into conflict at any moment. And this only added to the uncertainty that defined this era. But beyond all this, there was something else, something deeper, a psychological shift. For centuries, Rome had been seen as eternal, unbreakable, a symbol of order and power, something that would last forever. But now, that belief was fading. As defeats increased, territories were lost, confidence disappeared. And this loss of belief had consequences, because belief is strength, and without it, systems begin to collapse, especially one as vast as Rome, where trust and cooperation were essential. And as these elements broke down, Rome found itself unable to respond, unable to adapt. And this was one of the greatest failures, because once Rome had been adaptable, flexible, capable of overcoming anything, but now it had become rigid, stagnant, unable to change. And this contrast tells us something important, that success can create complacency, and systems that stop evolving eventually become vulnerable. And as the years passed, the Western Roman Empire continued to decline, its borders shrinking, its influence fading, its power disappearing. And this decline was not sudden, it was slow, gradual, uneven, and that made it dangerous, because people did not see it clearly. There was no single moment that said, "This is the end." Instead, there were moments of stability followed by collapse, hope followed by loss. And this confusion made action difficult. Leaders hesitated, decisions delayed. And by the time the truth became clear, it was too late. Too much had been lost. And perhaps the most tragic part was this: many people continued their lives as if nothing had changed, even as the world around them was falling apart. And this gap between perception and reality is one of the most powerful lessons in Rome's story, because it shows us how easy it is to ignore slow problems until they become impossible to fix. And as the Western Roman Empire approached its final years, the truth became undeniable. It was no longer the dominant power, no longer the ruler of the world. It had become a shadow of what it once was, struggling to survive in a world that was changing faster than it could handle, more fragmented, more uncertain, more dangerous. And this set the stage for the final chapter, the moment when the last remnants of Rome would finally collapse, and an empire that once shaped the world would come to an end. Everyone thinks Rome fell in 476, But that's completely wrong, because by the time it collapsed, Rome was already gone. Not destroyed in a war, not by one enemy, but by something far more dangerous, something happening from within. And in the final part, we reveal the exact moment everything silently broke. Stay with us, because this changes everything you think you know about history.